Climate change poses an existential threat to human civilization. And by now in 2017, all intelligent human beings agree that we really need to do something about it. And yet, our second millennium political institutions are failing us. We've dedicated billions of dollars for climate finance, and they are stuck in a gigantic bureaucratic machines, not reaching the projects that need the funding. The Liquid Climate Fund proposes a solution to the core problem generating all this bureaucracy, and that is to provide legitimacy, democratic legitimacy, for the procurement of a global public good for 7 billion people. There are numerous technical problems in climate finance, but most of those could actually be solved with a regular SQL database hosted at the United Nations. So the real problem is not tracking of certificates or transparency, but the legitimacy of the decisions taken. The UN in its current form is deriving legitimacy from nation-states. And this indirect way creates a whole string of inefficiencies downstream. Because the best solution for passing down legitimacy through institutions of government from the second millennium is bureaucracy. And that has a lot of downsides, as we all know. Therefore, the one issue in climate change that really requires a trustless ledger is what creates this legitimacy in the first place. And that is voting by the general public. The Liquid Climate Fund will therefore use Ethereum to create an integrated platform that allowed voters in both developed and developing countries to find an agreement on which climate change projects to fund. The Liquid Climate Fund creates a much faster and more scalable way to fund climate projects than any of the existing institutions. To get there, it will allow ad hoc decision-making on a project-by-project basis. And while ad hoc decision-making by unelected bureaucrats would be an invitation to corruption, the Liquid Climate Fund uses an entirely different approach. All decisions are made by sovereign voters through liquid democracy, and therefore even small ad hoc decisions are fully legitimate and transparent. We expect the strongest impact for project ideas originating in developing countries, as those are currently struggling most with the paperwork of the old institutions. A first proxy for the total market size for the fund is found in the Paris Climate Accord. It aims to raise $100 billion per year from 2020. It's also worth noting that the current mechanisms are failing to distribute even a small fraction of that amount. Decision-making in climate finance today is highly intermediated. First, voters elect parliaments, who then appoint ministers, who then appoint negotiators, who then appoint board members of those climate finance institutions, who then hire experts to do the actual work. Using liquid democracy would allow experts to motivate voters to get tasks directed to them, cutting out the entire chain of intermediaries there. Additionally, many sectors most relevant for climate change are traditionally plagued by corruption, in particular in developing countries. So, for example, the waste sector, the transport sector, or the forestry sector. So increasing legitimacy and transparency of climate finance is also vital to avoid losing the resources to corrupt actors. And last but not least, the trustless system is required for legitimate voting. That is really the core issue why this can only be done by a blockchain and in no other way. The Liquid Climate Fund is not designed as a for-profit enterprise. The idea is not to make money, but to function as a support in global governments. It is thus expected to be fully dependent on grants for the development. More importantly, and several orders of magnitude larger, the funding allocated to climate change projects through the Liquid Climate Fund will also mainly come from governments as part of their commitments under the Paris Agreement. But to allow the platform to continue operation and to also improve and add features over time, it allows for proposals to be funded through the platform itself that are basically feature requests increasing the capabilities of it. On the technical side, there are 4 types of smart contracts required to make the Liquid Climate Fund operational. The first one is proposal creation. The second is voting for eligibility. The third is voting for funding. And the fourth one is validation of milestones and then the according payout to the projects. But as the Liquid Climate Fund targets all developing countries, the platform should also have an option for voting by SMS and offer countries with underdeveloped national ID systems an alternative to improve voter engagement. And these last two parts are particularly difficult, and there might be options to utilize other blockchain startups that we haven't identified yet, especially for the proof of identity. To round things up, I would like to put our proposal into the larger context of blockchains. The true promise of the technology is the decentralization of everything, including government. So by providing a first function of government, the spending of climate finance, we might plant a seed that one day could grow into a true global decentral democracy.